Okay, so we all hear about AI, right? The breakthroughs, the power, but what's happening behind the scenes? Well, there's a huge battle brewing over the rules that are going to control it all, and this isn't just some boring legal stuff. We're talking about a global fracture, a split that's pulling the entire world in totally different directions. So let's get into it.
So, this brings up a really obvious question. I mean, if AI is this global thing, why on earth isn't there just one rulebook for it? That seems like the most logical way to go, doesn't it?
Well, the simple answer is also the most dramatic one. It's because the world's superpowers, we're talking the US, the EU, and China, have all looked at the same future, and they've decided to go down three completely different paths. And make no mistake, this wasn't an accident. This was a choice. And that choice, that's what's created what people are now calling the global AI regulatory fracture. You can think of it as this tripolar world, right? Three competing philosophies, all pulling in different directions. So let's dig into how that actually works. But here's where it gets kind of interesting. There's a twist. Before we dive into all the conflict and the differences, you've got to understand that at a really high level, everybody pretty much agrees on the goal. It's kind of surprising, but there's a lot of common ground on what good ethical AI should actually look like.
Okay, so first, let's just get on the same page with a quick definition. When we say AI governance, what are we talking about? It's basically the whole process of keeping an eye on an AI system, to cut down on risks, make sure it's following the rules, and just generally making sure it's being used responsibly.
And what's really wild is just how universal some of these core ideas are. You've got these huge international bodies, like the OECD and UNESCO, and they've all kind of landed on a global consensus around a few key principles. You might have seen it summarized with the acronym FAT.
So, what is FAT? Well, the F is for fairness. Pretty simple. The AI shouldn't be biased. The A is for accountability, meaning when something goes wrong, someone has to be legally on the hook for it. And T is for transparency. We, as humans, need to be able to understand why an AI made a decision and be able to challenge it. It's this basic ethical foundation that, everyone says they agree on.
Okay, but this is where all that agreement just stops. It's one thing to agree on some nice-sounding principles, it's a whole other thing to turn them into actual laws. And this is where we see those three totally distinct paths emerge.
And you can see the split so clearly just by looking at their core goals. The European Union, they're all about safety and human rights. The United States, for them, it's innovation and competition, hands down. And China, it's national security and control. I mean, with starting points that different, you're bound to end up with completely different systems.
So let's start with the EU. The best way to think about their model is like a super careful architect. Before you can even think about breaking ground and building your AI, they want to see detailed blueprints. And those blueprints have to be pre-approved to make sure the whole thing is safe. It's absolutely a safety-first kind of approach.
And the core of this whole thing is what's called the EU's risk pyramid. At the very top, you've got stuff that's just flat out prohibited. Think social scoring systems, totally banned. Then you have high-risk AI, like stuff used in healthcare or hiring. That's got to go through strict certification before it hits the market. And as you go down the pyramid to limited and minimal risk, the rules get lighter. It's a really comprehensive top-down way of doing things.
All right, now let's hop over to the US, where the model is completely different. It's innovation first through and through. The whole philosophy is kind of like, hey, go build whatever you want, but just know if it fails and hurts somebody, you're going to get sued into oblivion. So it's really governance by lawsuit.
And because there's no single big federal law, the US has turned into this crazy patchwork quilt of state and local rules. Just look at the numbers for 2025. 47 states introduced AI bills. Can you imagine the headache for a company trying to operate across the country? You have places like New York City requiring really specific bias audits for hiring tools, while another state has totally different rules. It's a mess.
And that brings us to our third model, China's control-first approach. The best analogy here is to imagine a government inspector who doesn't just visit your construction site, they live there. They're not just approving the first blueprint, they are demanding constant updates, looking over your shoulder, and maintaining total oversight on everything you do, every single day.
How do they do this? Through a mandatory algorithm filing system. So before you can launch anything, you have to file your algorithm with the government. And here's the kicker. If you make any update to it, you've got just 10 working days to update that filing. It's a system of constant, centralized oversight, literally. So here's the big takeaway. These different rulebooks, they aren't just some academic debate. They have huge, real-world consequences. This is turning AI governance into a brand new front in a global geopolitical arms race.
Yeah, we really have to stop thinking about these as just boring legal documents. They're not. In what some people are already calling the AI Arms Race 2.0, these regulations are basically weapons. They are tools of national power, designed to lock in technological dominance.
And this is pushing us into a new kind of tech Cold War. But it's a really interesting one because there's this striking imbalance, this asymmetry. The US has a lock on the most advanced AI chips, the GPUs, the real brains of the operation. But China has its own powerful leverage. It controls the critical minerals like rare earths that you absolutely need to make that hardware in the first place.
So what happens when you have a conflict like this? The result is something called technological decoupling. Essentially, the US and China are building two separate, walled-off tech worlds, and this is forcing companies everywhere to pick a side. It's creating, as one expert put it, a more paranoid world, and you can feel it.
Okay, so what does all this geopolitical drama mean for you? For the people who are actually building and using AI? I mean, how are you supposed to navigate a world where your one AI product has to follow 3 completely different rulebooks all at once? Well, the strategy for surviving this fracture is becoming pretty clear. First, you need an adaptable framework. That means building your AI on those universal ethical principles: fairness, accountability, transparency, but then having a plug-and-play system to localize your compliance for each market. Second, you have to get audits. Get a third party to verify that your stuff is fair. It's about proof. And third, you have to manage your supply chain risk. Seriously, you have to start thinking about where your chips and minerals come from as a core business risk, right up there with finance and marketing.
And that really just brings us to the bottom line here. The era of frictionless global AI, it's over. Those days of building one cool AI product and just shipping it everywhere around the world, they're gone. We are now in a fractured, complex, and incredibly high-stakes new reality for artificial intelligence.